My study is about spherical and circular architecture. I would like to explore ancient Roman structures such as the Pantheon and the Colosseum, which were built around 2000 years ago in Europe. The objective is to examine whether they can be considered as prototypes for modern spherical and circular architecture. A sphere, among all three-dimensional forms with the same volume, had the smallest surface area. Thus, I consider it has a sense of enclosure. Likewise, a circle, among all two-dimensional forms with the same area, had the shortest perimeter, and so that it has a sense of surrounding. Let me begin by discussing spherical architecture. As I've grown older, these years I often recall the past. I feel that visiting the Pantheon in my 20s was my first experience to be impressed by architectural form. I was overwhelmed by the huge space enclosing a 43-meter diameter sphere with light pouring in from the oculus above. The Pantheon was the first architecture in history that an interior space was appeared distinctly. As Sir Bannister Fletcher pointed out, this scale was not surpassed until 1420–36, when Brunelleschi constructed a slightly larger dome over the crossing of the Florence Cathedral. This is the Firenze Cathedral, Santa Maria del Fiore, of which the Pantheon was recreated in the form of the dome, after 1,500 years in the Renaissance. The dome encloses a sphere of the same diameter as the Pantheon, 43 meters. Elevated high above the ground, the sphere appears symbolic when seen from the outside. However, the sense of enclosure is rather weakened, as the dome is integrated with the lower structure. The same can be said of St. Peter's Basilica. The dome, designed by Michelangelo with an inner diameter of 43 meters, appears impressive when viewed from the ground. However, when viewed from the inside, it does not convey the same sense of scale as the Pantheon. The Pantheon in Paris, a neoclassic architecture designed by Jacques-Germain Soufflot in the 18th century, is also considered a reference to the ancient Pantheon. However, while the dome emphasizes its symbolic presence by being lifted high into the air through a triple shell structure, the diameter of the inner dome is only about half the scale of the ancient Pantheon. There is little sense of being enclosed by the dome within the interior space. The Church of San Francesco di Paola in Naples, constructed in the 19th century, clearly draws inspiration from the ancient Pantheon. It has an interior space enclosed by a dome, but the inner diameter of the dome is smaller than that of the ancient Pantheon. Going back to the 6th century Byzantine era, another significant architecture with dome had been built. It is the Hagia Sophia, constructed with a pendentive dome in which the main dome is supported by subdomes. The diameter of the main dome is 31 meters, which is smaller than that of the Pantheon. However, the interior space that extends beneath the subdomes surpasses the scale of the Pantheon. The Sydney Opera House, a UNESCO World Heritage, stands out as one of the most remarkable examples of modern spherical architecture. All of the distinctive curved roof surfaces are segments of spheres with diameters of 150 meters. And similar to a pendentive dome, the space beneath the spherical roofs features an expansive scale. Let me also introduce one of contemporary Japanese architecture with spheres, This is the Kusendo Forest Museum, which is built on a mountainside. The interior space is composed of 7 domes, each with a diameter of 15 meters. Some spaces are formed by a single sphere, while some other spaces are formed by a continuous series of multiple spheres. This is nothing more than a little example, but the spherical architecture I designed. It has not been realized, unfortunately. Now, up to the present day, with the advance of steel structure engineering, it has become possible to build spherical constructions that exceed the scale of the Pantheon. The geodetic dome in Montreal, with a diameter of 76 meters, designed by Buckminster Fuller, marked the beginning of the architectural innovation. However, the glasses that once covered the outer shell had since been removed. The interior space no longer conveys a sense of enclosure. I believe the largest spherical structure in the world today is the Sphere in Las Vegas, with a diameter of 112 meters. However, since the interior of this massive structure is a theater, it feels more like a large-scale device than architecture. While not exceed the scale of the Pantheon, there are several large spherical structures in Japan as well. For example, the planetarium in Nagoya, which is said to be the largest planetarium in the world, has a diameter of 35 meters. The Hachitama Sphere in Tokyo has a diameter of 32 meters. While the spherical form is eye-catching and symbolic, the interior is less a true spherical space and more like a circular observation room. The spherical space, exemplified by the Pantheon, has come to embody symbolism, spatial expansiveness. However, with only a few exceptions, such as pavilions or structure designed for specialized purposes, I would argue that contemporary architecture has not yet surpassed the scale of the Pantheon. I would now like to turn to circular forms. I consider that the Colosseum of the ancient Rome is the prototype of the circular architecture. At the center of an elliptical plan with the major axis of 188 meters lies an arena measuring 86 meters along its major axis. It was by no means merely a site of killing people, but rather a venue for public spectacles or sporting events, and is also believed to have held significant political importance. It could accommodate 45,000 spectators, and in some areas, the seating had a steep incline of over 40 degrees. Although half of its outer wall is now missing, the original structure was a complete elliptical form. Other than in Rome, many ancient Roman cities also had amphitheaters. This is in Pula, Croatia. The outer wall is well preserved and measures 133 meters along its major axis. The interior is now used as a venue for contemporary events. This is an amphitheater in Verona, Italy. A remarkably well-preserved amphitheater. Today, operas are performed. In addition, circular architecture was built in various other locations. Looking farther back in time, circular theaters, or stadiums for the ancient Olympic Games, also existed in the era of ancient Greece. By the way, in my early years, I began my research by analyzing the forms of European plazas. A plaza is a space enclosed by walls. This is the Piazza del Campo in Siena, Italy. It is a relatively large plaza that was formed in the medieval period. The Piazza del Campo is located at the city center. And outside the historic city center, there is a football stadium. When comparing the size of the plaza and the football stadium, the stadium appears to be slightly larger. A football pitch barely fit in the plaza. Now, I'd like to talk about the analysis of the characteristics of forms of football stadiums related to the scale and sense of enclosure. This is because I consider that there is a resemblance of the forms and the enclosed space between football stadiums and the Colosseum. But before moving on, let me mention the relationship between Japan and the renowned Serbian football player Pixi Stojkovic. Pixi joined Nagoya Grampus in 1994 and played for the team until 2001. He later became the team's head coach in 2008. He stepped down the head coach in 2013. Mr. Stojkovic made a significant contribution to the development of Japanese football. This is the same scale 3D models of the Colosseum and Toyota Stadium, which was once Pixi's home stadium. I was wondering if football could be played in the Colosseum, but a football pitch does not fit in the arena. The scale of the Plaza Mayor in Madrid, Spain is similar to that of a football stadium. Perhaps a match could be played here. This is a simplified plan of 44 plazas that I previously depicted. Only 6 of the 44 plazas could include a football pitch. Therefore, it can be said that the scale of the plaza is comparable to or smaller than that of a football stadiums. Now, I would like to share the scale and sense of enclosure in stadiums. As you know, basically there are two types of football stadiums. This is the National Stadium of Japan that was built for the Tokyo 2020 Olympics, which is a multi-use stadium designed for both football and athletics. This type has both football pitch and athletic track. The other type is, for example, famous San Siro Stadium in Milano. It is a football-specific stadium. San Siro is a huge stadium said to accommodate over 75,000 spectators. We can grasp its enormous scale when viewed from the above. In Japan, top professional football league is J1. The 20 teams of J1 for the season 2024 used 19 home stadiums. Of the 19 stadiums, 13 are football specific. Back in 1999, only about 1 in 3 stadiums were specific, but today it increased to 2 in 3. Before explaining the analysis, I would like to introduce the J1 League stadiums in order of increasing seating capacity. In terms of perception, as seating capacity increases and as the playing form becomes more circular, the sense of enclosure in the stadium tends to be stronger. This is Kashiwa Stadium, a specific stadium with a capacity of 15,000. I think the sense of enclosure in this stadium is relatively weak. Yamaha Stadium is built along a slope. Rather than situated on flat ground, it may give a slight sense of enclosure. Machida is a multi-use stadium with an athletic track. In this space, I feel a sense of openness that expands to the surrounding park. Shona is also a multi-use stadium that is integrated with the surrounding park, offering a sense of openness. Ekimae is a relatively compact, specific stadium with a capacity of 20,000 seats, and it may offer a certain sense of enclosure. Besto Denki is a specific stadium with a large roof structure. I think it is a space that combines both a sense of enclosure under the roof and a sense of openness in the uncovered areas. Kyoto is a fully enclosed specific stadium. Yodoko Sakura is a medium-sized specific stadium with a simple layout, featuring spectator stands along each side of the pitch. As the corner stands are not enclosed, I felt a sense of openness that connected to the outside. Kawasaki Stadium is multi-use. Hiroshima is a new specific stadium that opened last year. Kobe is a specific stadium with a retractable roof and an almost circular floor plan. Kashima, built in 1993, is the first full-scale football-specific stadium in Japan. From this point on, the stadiums shown are relatively large, each with a seating capacity of over 38,000. Sapporo Dome is a ball game specific stadium that can be used for both football and baseball. The football pitch is maintained outside the stadium and is moved when games are held. Suita in Osaka is a specific stadium with an angular floor plan. Niigata is a large, oval-shaped multi-use stadium. Toyota is a specific stadium with a circular floor plan. I think this stadium is moderately enclosed by the seating areas and the roof above them. Ajinomoto in Tokyo is a multi-use stadium. The second largest stadium is in Saitama. This is a specific stadium with a circular floor plan. The pitch is evenly surrounded by spectator stands. However, since the roof lacks over the side stands, it also gives a sense of openness. The stadium with the largest seating capacity among J1 League stadiums is Nissan Stadium, located in Yokohama. This was the venue for the final match of the 2002 FIFA World Cup. Since this is a multi-use stadium, there is a distance between the stands and the pitch. These are aerial photographs of the stadiums. 6 out of 10 stadiums located in Tokyo and east beyond are multi-use stadiums. Based on these aerial photographs, I depicted simplified figures of the plane forms, which include the forms of the roofs. All 9 stadiums located west of Tokyo are football-specific stadiums. In the middle left of this diagram, the Colosseum and other examples are shown. It looks that the scale of football stadiums is roughly similar to that of the Colosseum. For the analysis, I focused on 2 characteristics. The first is the centripetal ratio, which I used in my previous form analysis of plazas. This ratio expresses how closely a given planar shape approximates a perfect circle. It is calculated as the inverse of the ratio between the circumference of the shape and the circumference of a perfect circle with the same area. A value of 100% indicates a perfect circle, while lower values represent shapes that are more long and angular. While the Colosseum has a ratio of 99%, the ratios for the stadiums ranged from 82% to 100%. Regardless of whether they are football-specific or multi-use, as the seating capacity increases, the plane form tends to become more circular. Several stadiums have the seating capacities and the centripetal ratios comparable to those of the Colosseum. As a second characteristic, I calculated how extensively the field, such as the pitch or athletic track, is surrounded by spectator seating. This was done using simplified figures depicted from the available architectural drawings. For a result, it appears that football stadiums have either a comparable or larger area to the Colosseum. However, when the figures are scaled so that the field areas are equal to the Colosseum, the football stadiums appear smaller than the Colosseum. Here, the number in parentheses are the seating-to-field ratio, which indicate how many times larger the seating area is when compared to the field area. Only 3 stadiums, Saitama, Toyota, and San Siro, match the Colosseum's seating-to-field ratio of 4.95. Among them, the 2 Japanese stadiums have perfectly circular plane forms. The seating-to-field ratio of all J1 stadiums, as well as San Siro and the National Stadium, was lower than that of the Colosseum. Thus, it can be pointed out that the sense of enclosure in today's stadium has not yet surpassed that of the Colosseum. In other words, it may be argued that the Colosseum serves as the prototype of the stadium. The 3 stadiums which resemble the Colosseum was all football specific. They had large seating capacities, and the 2 Japanese stadiums had circular plane forms. In conclusion, the Colosseum is considered as a prototypical circular architectural form, transcending a span of 2,000 years. Furthermore, the Pantheon represents a prototype for large-scale enclosed interior spaces in contemporary spherical architecture. These reflections developed through the process of depicting simplified geometric figures and 3D models. Thank you for your attention.